I'm Jay Huddleston, and this is part 3 in my In the War on Drugs reading. I had been saying in part 2 that protecting the people was law enforcement's role, and that the war on drugs doesn't protect people from violence, and it doesn't protect addicts with treatment options, and clearly disenfranchising people is not protecting them. The war on drugs war paradigm, in this paradigm, the parties in the war are the U.S. government versus the United States people. Drug felons like myself may be considered loyalists in the war on drugs. Instead of having the enemy be the Colombian cartels or the Afghanistan poppy lords or whatever, the majority of the thrust of the war on drugs goes to incarcerating small amount possessors of drugs. How can I be at war with the country I love, and how can it be at war with 20% of its people who regularly use illegal drugs? What we need is a war on war. Enough war already. This is war without end. Like the war on terror, it is ideologically driven, so it can't be defined or won. Agencies like DEA need the war on drugs for their survival. Let's look again at DEA's explosive growth since its founding by Nixon in 1972. The budget for 1972's DEA founding was $65 million. In 1980, it was $206 million. In 1986, it was $393 million. In 1987, it grew to a whopping $773 million. In 92, it was $910 million. The budget for DEA in 1995 was $1,010 million, and in 2004, $2,040 million. In 2007, last year, the budget was $2,345 million. Okay, that's growth from a budget of $65 million in 1972 to $2,345 million in 2007. Republicans and Democrats alike fueled the growth. Now let's look at personnel for DEA in that same time span, the number of employees the DEA has. In 1972, they were founded with 2,775 employees. In 1974, they had 4,075 employees. In 1987, they had 5,710 employees. In 1991, they had 7,096 employees. In 1998, they had 8,452 employees. In 2004, they had 10,564 employees, and last year, 2007, they had 10,759 employees. So in personnel, the DEA, probably the most unsuccessful agency in our country's history, has been rewarded for its failure by being given a staff that has grown from 2,775 in 1972 to a staff of 10,759 employees last year, 2007. And who pays for it? You do. It's also a contributor to corporate welfare because they use contractors and they buy things like guns and Kevlar vests, but they have their own planes, and for what? To fail miserably and to throw duplicate resources at the drug war? The DEA is in the business of growing the DEA. I chose this agency because all they do is drug enforcement, but there is a parallel growth in other federal agencies who deal mostly with drugs like FBI, and state and local law enforcement whose focus on drug crime is over 40% of total resources, making it the single largest crime category nationwide, while total violent criminals in custody account for only 17% of overall inmates. That indicates law enforcement is throwing only 17% of resources at violent crime that threatens us all in a real way. And over 40% of their resources are going to drugs. This isn't what Americans want. They never wanted it to be this way, or to pay for it. When poor schools underperform, the government takes away their funding and teacher pay to punish them. Why don't they do that with law enforcement who are unable to contain the growth of the drug trade, let alone lower supply or demand? They are rewarded for failure year after year with bigger and bigger budgets. 800,000 marijuana arrests last year in this country. netting the arrest of only an estimated 2% of users. What if they were able to arrest the other 98% of users who weren't caught? We'd have 40 million people behind bars, and what would it accomplish? With this many people using marijuana alone, the war on drugs ignores the fact that drug use is an American value. Thank you. I'm Jay Huddleston.